Next presenter is Michael Tippy. Michael's going to talk about geothermal.
So, hello everyone. For the people that weren't here on Tuesday, majority of you were, but a few weren't. My name's Michael Tippy. I'm the owner of Tab Mechanical. I do sustainable building consulting and product supply. I'm going to talk to you about geothermal. Myself, I'm not a geothermal installer or supplier. I've been in the HVAC industry for 25 years now. I'm a licensed refrigeration mechanic and a gas fitter. I've worked a lot on geothermal systems over that period of time. Some of the things have changed, and we'll talk about those in terms of accreditations and such. I'm not necessarily involved in that industry, but I have a wide knowledge and a history in that industry. So hopefully I can present you with an unbiased view, because I'm not up here trying to sell you products in regards to geothermal. We're going to go through, you'll see of course a couple slides that we've seen on Tuesday, but we'll review those, okay? You're not my students, so there's no closed book test or open book test at the end, right? Couldn't have an open book today because we're going to get a slide presentation, but you'll get this, as Al said, you'll post a slide presentation on the website, so you'll be able to download it and review it in more detail at that point. Feel free again to ask questions while we're progressing which one. This one, right? We're on you again. We're on here earlier, then. So I set up. So like I say, we're going to go through an introduction. We'll go through the different technologies. We'll go through installation issues, cost calculations, how you get your project done, a quick case study, and then we can do a little bit of questions and follow up at that point. Very similar to Rick's layout. All the formats hopefully going to be consistent through the presentations over the next few days. So similar to what I talked about on Tuesday, there's geo-exchange, geothermal. Those are the two terms. You're typically going to hear geothermal most of the time, but recognize, as I said on Tuesday, if you're watching TV and you hear geothermal and they're talking about Iceland or Nevada or Utah, they actually might be talking about like hot springs and getting direct geothermal in that regard. Geo-exchange is actually the more valid term to be utilized, and you'll see that the accreditation body utilizes that term. The other term that you might see, there's two different books that you could go online and from Natural Resources Canada and find this PDF document and download it. And this one's called Earth Energy Systems, so that's another term, right, that we can utilize. So there's a residential book you can download and get more information, right? And then there's a commercial book that's, of course, even thicker, has more in-depth information. So if you want to learn more about this and you want to do some reading, you're more than welcome to download that, right? Dates back as far as 1912. Basically, ground source energy dates back to when we had mechanical refrigeration. Okay, we've utilized it since that point. Gained a lot of market acceptance in the 1970s. Saw a big uptake in the 1980s, and now, of course, with the eco-action grants and such that are substantial for geo-exchange systems, right? We're seeing a resurgence in that interest in the product. We've seen systems in the 1970s and the 1980s that had various different problems around in terms of performance issues. That is a result of training in terms of design and installation. And what we'll talk about later here is that it is required now to have appropriate training in place if you're going to be an installer, a designer. Simply, we're transferring energy from one point to another point, right? One of the laws of thermodynamics is we don't create energy or we don't destroy energy. So what we're doing is we're just taking energy from one source and placing it to where our needs are, okay? So in this case, of course, we're mainly concerned about heating. That's what we're talking about today, space heating or domestic hot water heating as well. We can do with our ground source heat pump. And then, but we also can take our heat and remove it from our home and put it into the ground and do an air conditioning space function, okay? Maybe renewable, maybe not. At this point, under the LEED rating system, and I'm a LEED AP, LEED is now not classified a geo-exchange system as a non-renewable energy source, okay? You're going to hear that, and that's because we're utilizing electricity to drive a mechanical device, and yes, we get high efficiencies out of it, but it's not similar to where Rick is talking about hot water solar thermal. I mean, efficiencies, if you're talking about operating system efficiencies, we're talking in thousands here now. We're only going to increase our energy here in the neighborhood of, you'll see, 300 and 400%, okay? So what they call low-grade geothermal, in other words, our heat pump, isn't necessarily going to be classified as a renewable energy source, okay, under certain rating systems. Benefits of a geo-exchange system. Main benefit, low life cycle costing, okay? One of the big terms that's occurred, obviously, when we build our house, okay, is everybody's always concerned about that first capital cost, that first initial cost that we're looking at. People, unfortunately, especially as a North American society, we look at first capital cost and we don't look at life cycle cost. So life cycle cost includes that initial investment that you're making and your operating cost, okay? If we look at big picture and look at the system for its life cycle and how much it costs to install plus operate, then we see that our geo-exchange system has a very low cost compared to our normal traditional heating system of a gas furnace and normal air conditioning, okay? Costs more to operate those equipment. You have to still replace them. So yes, you're making an investment up front. That first capital cost is higher, but that life cycle cost is lower. And that's what we need to, as a society, start to evaluate things on life cycle costing. And that is happening. That shift is happening. You're going to find with geo-exchange systems that they do have that lower operating cost, and they also have a lower maintenance cost. That's a result of the fact that it doesn't operate under as much distress in changes of operating conditions. We'll look a little bit later at that the ground stays at a constant temperature, okay? An air-cooled system that's using is, of course, working against the outdoor ambient temperature in the summertime. So when it gets hotter outside and we're trying to move that heat outside, it's harder and harder to move the heat out, even though we need to move more heat out because the house is gaining heat. So that increases our maintenance costs, lowers our lifespan, okay? As a result of that, we're going to have increased comfort because the machine is going to operate more efficiently. So we're not going to necessarily have the same swings in performance that we might see with an air source heat pump system or an air source or just an normal air conditioning system that you're used to. You have a smaller equipment size physically with the pieces of equipment. It could be a little more compact, take up less room in your basement. So you have more usable space in that basement than you might have with a normal AC system and heating system. You're going to have